May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from harm. May all beings love life. May all beings awaken. Welcome to another Cuke Audio podcast. I'm DC Puba of Cuke Audio and Cuke Archives. I pray that you and yours are safe and comfortable, free from economic hardship, and able to get out and do whatever it is you want within the limitations of the universal precept of do as little harm as possible. So I'm going to read a Shunryu Suzuki lecture excerpt in a second. But I'm just going to mention a little what it's like to live here with COVID everywhere for us. As I have mentioned recently, COVID, which was down to practically nothing, has with Omicron has come through, wow, like an explosion. So it went from 2 a day to 2,000 a day. I think it's going to go down from here. But the economy is so depressed from that. It's hard to tell by being around people and everything because nobody's freaking out, you know. People are following the protocols. They're wearing masks and, you know, they're loose. They'll flaunt the rules if nobody's looking or whatever, but they do what they can. I'm impressed that most the Indonesians I know, almost all, been vaccinated and are getting their booster. Look, I just talked to somebody yesterday, an Indonesian. He's from Jakarta, but he has a health food store here. And he said he thought he wouldn't get a booster. And I said, yeah, I know a lot of Americans who think that way. That was a bit of a dig from me to him. Right. Somebody in the health food world, right? And there's a lot of anti-vax stuff coming from the wellness community, the health food world, the new age world. Does not impress me. A lot of what I hear from people, it's anecdotal stuff. I'd say play the odds. I might have mentioned this in another podcast, but look, I used to play bridge when I was young. I'm too scatterbrained to be a good bridge player. You really gotta be able to focus and be able to count the cards and know what's been played and start getting a picture of all four hands as they come down, you know, what's remaining and all that. And I really enjoy the game. I loved reading about bridge. And I used to read at least one bridge column a day. I loved it. And when I lived in Japan, it was far out. There were like 5 English language newspapers, every one of them with a different bridge column. And, we subscribed. We had one delivered, so I'd read that. But sometimes I'd be out and I'd get all 5. That would be great. But anyway, one thing about bridge and about poker and about gin rummy, the bridge are the 3 great skill games in cards, where people who are skilled can win consistently over people who aren't. One thing about them is that the people who win consistently are the ones that know the odds, the ones that know the statistics, the ones that consistently play the odds, do not play hunches. You can read other people, of course, and there are stuff like that. And of course, you can't resist sometime a hunch. But the ones who consistently play the odds do well. Now, and there's another thing, the ones with good stamina. Charles Gorin was thought of as the best bridge player in the world when I was a kid, or when I was a teenager, when I started playing I was actually playing tournament bridge. And it was said that Gorin, one of the reasons he could win was because he could hold his liquor. And there was a lot of drinking. We were 16, 17 years old, man. People invite us over to their homes. We'd be drinking until dawn. And at the bridge tournaments, they'd give us drinks. I mean, it was something. And I've run into bridge players since then, good bridge players who do, big tournaments, who said it's like the old people or the drinkers. And a lot of young people, they get stoned when they play. I cannot imagine that. Anyway, the ones who play the odds consistently win. And I would say the same is true with dealing with COVID. Is play the odds. Don't play those anecdotal things. Now, I know, if you're surrounded by people that have had bad reactions, it's hard not to think, well, I don't want to do that. But, to me, it's sort of like I've got a good friend that claims he lived in 2 automobile accidents because he wasn't wearing a seatbelt. So he'll never wear a seatbelt. I told him he should get a T-shirt with a stripe down coming diagonally so he didn't get stopped and get tickets for it. Yeah, so that's the argument. And then, people say, well, you can get it if you're vaccinated. Yeah, well, you can have an accident if you have a seatbelt on, but you're a hell of a lot better off. I've probably already said that. I should stop that. Anyway, living here with COVID, in some ways, it's very, very nice for us, but we don't like to think about that because it's not very, very nice for people who depend on tourists and tourism. And one way it does get us is that people we know and who we've worked with still need to have some income to be able to eat and not lose their vehicle, So we're going away for my birthday, and this is the day after my birthday. We're going away. I'm making this. This is Thursday. I'm making this podcast on Monday, and the gardener. I told Gardner, don't come this week because we're going away. He said, I've got to have the work. I said, well, come by. We'll give you a little something if you need to eat. There's a lot of that, and it adds up. I mean, there's a lot of extra pay. There's a lot of tips and stuff. It adds up. Thank goodness we live in an economy that's, they live on, 1/20th of what an American would live on. It's just different economies. So, anyway, one reason we live here is because we can't live in America because it's too expensive. Anyway, you get the idea. So I'm going to move on now to the what Shunryu Suzuki had to say. Here, this is from a lecture he gave, just like the ones prior, on the 22nd of June, 1967. This is from Lecture A. To study Buddhism in an intellectual sense is, of course, important. But when we lose our spirit of practice, all that you have studied will cause some trouble rather than helping. This morning I felt a great joy of practice with you, and I am quite sure that our practice will continue forever. This morning I felt a great joy of practice with you, and I am quite sure that our practice will continue forever. It could have been a morning lecture in Los Altos. And he gave 2, one in the morning and one in the evening. That could be it. Because, I remember this now from saying the same sort of thing in a lecture at Los Altos. So maybe. I'm going to go check it. Okay, yeah. This is Los Altos. And not only is it Los Altos, it's the lecture where he introduced Kobuchino. Kobuchino had just come from Japan. He was coming to be the priest of the Los Altos Zendo, but we needed him at Tassajara, so they just got to meet him, and bang, he went down to Tassajara so that Bob Halperin and I could drive him crazy, asking him questions and chasing after him and treating him like the greatest enlightened Buddha of all time. That was great. He was so great. But again, let's look at what he had to say there. He said, to study Buddhism in an intellectual sense is, of course, important, but when we lose our spirit of practice, all that you have studied will cause some trouble rather than helping. This morning, I felt a great joy of practice with you, and I'm quite sure that our practice will continue forever. All right, so right off the bat, intellectual study is important. It is an essential effort. It is an essential part of practice. You can say Buddhism is the way beyond words and letters, but it includes words and letters. And any practice that doesn't include words and letters, well, it's not bad, but I don't know how much it's going to help one or help others. So it's an essential element. But look, he said, but if we lose our spirit of practice, all that you have studied will cause some trouble rather than helping. One thing I noticed right there is like when we do light edits, fix them pronouns. He does this all the time. When we lose our spirit of practice, everything that you have studied, right? He's totally inconsistent in his use of pronouns. He'll go, our, you, I, we, and they, and, he. Really, it's just bouncing around. But they don't use those things in Japanese much, They're sort of free of that. And so he's got to stick them in. All right. So he says, intellectual study is important, but if we lose our spirit, it causes trouble. All right, so it's an essential element, but if it's the only element, it's not going to help. And it'll be an obstacle. It's got to be in balance with the spirit. It's got to be harmonious with the spirit of practice. And then he said, this morning, I felt a great joy of practice with you. So what he's saying there is your intellectual studies in good hands here, because it's in the hands of your spirit of practice, which is good. Yeah, he really liked the Los Altos group. It was inspiring to him. And he was inspiring to them. They were inspiring to him. And he said, I'm quite sure that our practice will continue forever. All right. That is, of course, there's no goal in our practice. Every moment's the goal, but that is a goal. We want our practice to continue forever. How does our practice continue forever? Well, through vow and through awakening the spirit of practice, because there's really nothing to hold on to in the world of thought and concepts. There's nothing deep to hold on to there. It helps, but the spirit, the more we plug into the spirit, the more we awaken to that, the more it'll stay with us. And the more we'll stay with it. All right, one more time. To study Buddhism in an intellectual sense is, of course, important, but when we lose our spirit of practice, all that we have studied will cause some trouble rather than helping. This morning, I felt a great joy of practice with you, and I am quite sure that our practice will continue forever. This has been a Cuke Audio Mini Podcast. I'm D.C. Puba of Cuke Archives and Cuke Audio, coming to you from sleepy Sonora with Doggett Pandita, Feline Cuchita, and dear lovely Katrinka. And we're wishing you and yours and all of us a grand awakening.